I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nicole, would you like to take the lead on doing roll call?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll start with Chair Chris Norwood,
Here.
Vice Chair Casey McNeil,
Here.
Commissioner Lynn Rice. You might be muted. Okay.
Here, I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner Indrajit Mundra,
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Deepak Aswaki,
Here.
and Alternate Commissioner Juliet Gomez, who I believe is absent today.
Yes.
Okay. And to know, Alternate Commissioner Deepak Aswaki was seated in place of the vacant and unfilled hospitality seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4 on the agenda is the seating of alternative. Did you just do that, Nicole?
That's right, I just did that.
What? You just did that?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Item number 5, approval of the agenda for February 8th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second. Who did the second?
I did it. Deepak Awasthi.
Thank you, Deepak. We have a motion and a second. All those in roll call vote. Nicole?
Starting with Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Rice,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra,
Yes.
and Commissioner Aswaki.
Yes.
Thank you. We have all approved the agenda of February 8th in the affirmative. Motion carries. Item number 6 on the agenda, approval of the minutes of January 11th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I move to make a motion to approve the minutes of January the 11th.
We have a motion by Vice Chair McNeil. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
We have a second from Indrajit or Board Member Commissioner Mundra. Roll call vote.
Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Rice.
I have to abstain. I was not here for the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mundra,
Yes.
Commissioner Aswaki,
Yes.
Excellent. We have an approval of the minutes for January 11th, 2021. Thank you, Commissioner Rice, for being so mindful in the abstain. Item number 7, public forum. Public forum. Oral comments may be provided live during the commission meeting by first registering for the Zoom meeting in advance by providing an email address and a name. You register in advance for the webinar, and there's the link. After registering, you will receive a confirmation email containing information about joining the webinar. All registering meeting attendees who wish to speak must click on the raise hand icon when the commission chair calls them for public comments. If participating by calling in, dial *9 to use the raise hand feature, and when you're called upon, hit *6 to unmute your phone. Your phone number will be displayed in the live meeting. Staff will call the speakers to begin. All comments provided shall be limited to 3 minutes or less, as determined by the chair. All members of the public will be limited to 1 comment per agenda item and 1 comment for non-agenda items. The online written comment form previously used is no longer available for public comment. At this time, we have, are there any speakers for public forum?
Chair Norwood, there are no raised hands for public comment.
Thank you, Nicole. There are no raised hands for public forum, which will give me a moment to say thank you to the city team for putting the approximate timeline next to each of these individual items on the agenda. It is extremely very helpful in giving us an idea of where we are in terms of timing and our ability to determine whether or not we can continue on a particular topic with additional discussions. So appreciate the direction and the support on that also from Vice Chair Casey McNeil. Item number 8 on the agenda, we have announcements from each of the individual commissioners. Who'd like to start?
I guess this Vice Chair McNeil, shout out to Vita Vea has a Super Bowl ring from Milpitas. So that's my announcement.
Yep, MHS grad, absolutely. Are there any other announcements?
Chair Norwood, I would like the time to have some announcements. I don't know if I can't see the rest of the agenda, but I'm not too sure if this is where you would like me to make any announcements from the council.
Absolutely. We do have time for that. So we can make sure that we include in the future board agenda item, we have announcements from council, whoever we may have announcements for, we can include that here on the agenda so that we have an expectation of those if they'll exist. So absolutely. You know what, Nicole, let's do the rest of the commission and then we'll do the announcements from the council.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
I do see we do have council member Dominguez here now at this time.
Sorry,
So
Chair.
are there any other announcements from commission members, commissioners? With that said, I'd like to make the last announcement from the commissioners. Recently at the joint meeting between the school district and the city, there was discussion about the MUSD Innovation Campus, which each of you had an opportunity to hear about from the superintendent of the district. And at the subcommittee meeting of the city and the school district, the item will be brought forth to the city council for discussion and possibility of becoming one of the founding members of the Milpitas MUSD Alliance Partners for Future Ready Learners program, which includes participation in the development strategy of the new innovation campus. Those are all the announcements from the commissioners. Announcements from council.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the time. At this time, I would like to thank all of you for your service. Thank you for being present today. I would like to announce just a quick update. I know on something that has been brought through this particular group. And so I definitely, if you have missed or have not been able to get the news, I know many of you were concerned about our small businesses and pays the time that they have to pay any fees and our ability as a city to waive any penalties. And so this has received council support in order, and it will be coming back. City has been directed to draft an ordinance and a resolution that would allow businesses in Milpitas to hold off any payment as late as May 31st. And this includes business licenses, fire permit fees, and other charges that come along with having an annual business license renewal. And so I definitely wanted to make sure that you were aware that we definitely took your feedback very serious from this particular group. Thank you for sharing that with me. And I am very thankful for the council for supporting that item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dominguez.
That concludes my announcements.
And I believe that will conclude the announcements. We
Actually,
are-
if I may, Chair Norwood, staff also has some announcements to make.
Awesome.
Thank you. With that, we'll proceed. So Margaret Tamasia, Nicole Inamine, and I will partner on providing updates from the economic development team. So I'm going to start with Margaret. Margaret came on board just over a year ago as a special projects coordinator. You may remember that back in 2019, Noah Kornblue was our economic development specialist. She left June of 2019. So in the meantime, while we were seeking an economic development specialist, Margaret came on board to assist and has done absolutely amazing. We now, of course, have Nicole Inamini as our economic development specialist. So this will be Margaret's last economic development and trade commission meeting. And so I just want to remind you that Margaret has definitely been instrumental in helping us out at the Office of Economic Development during what has been really difficult times for the last 11 months as we've tried to do the best that we can to help our business community in business resiliency and recovery. So just a few updates here. Margaret led the restaurant outreach partnership with the Chamber of Commerce and the Kiwanis Club early on. She helped us with a business survey that we conducted in April. She assisted with the hotel project that we're actually going to be discussing in a little bit. She also led the 2020 Manufacturing Day event, which, as you all know, was our first virtual meeting due to COVID. She's helped us quite a bit with business assistance and just countless constant contact messages, among various other projects. So I want to start by saying a heartfelt thank you to Margaret Tamasia for the collaboration this past year. You will be missed, but wanted to say thank you. My next
Thank you.
My next update has to do with last week's city council meeting. Our mayor, Mayor Tran, as the mayor, has the ability to appoint and remove commissioners along with city council approval. And last week, Commissioner San Vicente was removed and the city council approved that. So just want to also take the time on behalf of the city and the Office of Economic Development to say thank you to Mr. Victor San Vicente for his work on the Economic Development and Trade Commission. We wish him well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Margaret for some brief updates.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you for those kind words. And I really enjoyed getting to know Milpitas in a much different way as a staff member. So thank you for that support.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah. So my announcement is, as you probably know, I'm sure you know, we moved from the stay-at-home order to the purple tier since our last meeting together. So on January 25th, the governor allowed us to move to the purple tier. And for Milpitas businesses, that allowed us again to open up personal services and hair salons, some gyms and fitness centers for outdoor activity. And then one that people follow is a restaurant. So restaurants are now allowed to also have outside dining. Another thing that our economic development team has been doing is coordinating a very close relationship with our fire prevention department. They are the ones that are on the front lines. They're out checking businesses, keeping everyone safe, and following all the protocols that that businesses need to follow with COVID-19. And so we started meeting with them on a regular basis. And I wanted to just mention that partnership. We've had tremendous support from Al Zamara, who's the deputy fire chief, Jaime Garcia, the assistant fire marshal, and Eric Emanuel, the chief enforcement officer. And the approach they've really tried to take with this is first and foremost education, making sure businesses know what's required. And as the orders change, they make sure the businesses know about these changes. And also communicating not just with the businesses, but addressing if there's language issues so they can people can get the information and understand, but also coming back and communicating with our team if there's concerns, confusion, or if a business needs a little more help. And then finally, we are assisting in that partnership to continue the importance of communication and taking what we're hearing from fire prevention and putting that into constant contact messages and any additional messaging that needs to happen so our businesses are well served. Thank you.
And I have a few announcements as well. Milpitas Commission bylaws and Commissioner handbook have been updated. And to summarize the major changes, the first is there are no longer any commissioner term limits. The chair and the vice chair can serve 3 consecutive terms in that role. And now each commission has a youth non-voting seat. So please encourage Milpitas residents in grades 9 to 12 to apply. I'll follow up with the updated documents via email, and if you know anyone who may be interested in applying, I will send the application process as well. My second and last update is, or announcement is, Work to Future is hosting a virtual career fair this upcoming Thursday, February 11th at 10 a.m. Attendees can meet with hiring managers in the following business sectors. They'll have healthcare and caregiving, transportation and logistics, and construction and manufacturing. And that concludes my announcements. I'll hand it over to you, Chair Norwood.
And Chair Norwood, I have just one last one, and it'll be brief, if I can.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair Norwood. This is just a heads up that next month we will be presenting, actually Daniel Degu, our Economic Development Coordinator, will be presenting on a project that we're calling Fiscal Benefits of Employment Land Study. As we know, the housing development market continues to do well in Silicon Valley. We are still very much in a housing crisis. We need more housing, and in particular, we need more affordable housing. We do want to, at the same time, be cognizant of balancing housing with our employment lands. And so we need to ensure that the city's employment lands remain for opportunities for local residents to have jobs and be able to have those jobs closer to where they live. You may remember that our economic development strategy, there were various data and metrics that came out of that. One thing that we learned is 12% of our overall residents work in Milpitas. So that means the majority of our residents are actually leaving our city for work. So we want to make sure to help with developing and creating opportunities locally. So this analysis is going to identify high potential opportunity areas for converting warehouse and distribution space to higher value production like office and R&D space, and that's research and development. So this will be part of the innovation district that we will look at, as well as the light industrial areas. That concludes the staff updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Quick question for you. Are we, I don't recall the data, but are we aware of what the majority of Milpitas, in what industries the majority of Milpitas residents are employed?
We have data related to our workforce, and roughly 28% of our overall workforce works in tech and advanced manufacturing. However, that doesn't necessarily mean those are Milpitas residents, because what we know is only 12% of our local residents are actually working in Milpitas. So we don't have that exact data point of our residents, but we do have that information related to our workforce.
Would that be under the umbrella of economic and development, or would that be, where would that information potentially reside if we were to pursue having that information? Who would own that?
Yeah, Chair Norwood, this is actually a good segue to a partnership that the Office of Economic Development is looking toward with Nova Works. And some of you may be familiar with Nova. They are our workforce investment board. We are looking to contract and collaborate with Nova in order to develop we're going to look at local resident skill gaps, as well as looking at our businesses to see what needs are needed for local jobs. So it's going to be a workforce development and training program. I believe at that point, we will have a better understanding of where our residents are, what industries our residents are working in.
Okay,
More to come on that.
thank
If
you.
I may add, there was and this is probably about a year or so ago or more, is when the real estate people presented the market breakdown. It was about office buildings and so on. That had some pretty relevant data in there.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
If you remember, Alex, I wrote you a couple of emails on that, of what the interpretation was looking forward quite a while ago.
Yes, sir. I will have to remind everybody that during announcements, we are not necessarily able to have a conversation. This is something that we're going to agendize next month. So we'll have an opportunity to have a larger, more in-depth conversation. But yes, I do remember the emails. Thank you, Commissioner.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. Are there any other announcements at this point? Did any of the items from the commissioner, from the staff or Councilmember Dominguez remind any of the commissioners of any announcements that they wanted to make? Okay, thank you.
Chair Norwood, I just wanted to make a couple of announcements for Great Mall. As everyone knows and was noted, that we have moved to the purple tier, which hasn't changed our capacity. We still have a restricted capacity, but we do have a new retailer that will be opening in March, which is Sephora. Not sure if many people knew that Sephora, there's a big barricade up there, that they're going to be opening at the end of March. And then we are still waiting pending what tier we will be in on Legoland Discovery Center. So once we have a little bit better understanding on when entertainment will be able to reopen or open in the case of Legoland Discovery Center, I will be able to share that with the group.
Thank you very much, Lynn. We appreciate that announcement. Moving on to item 9, business items on the agenda. We're to item 9A, presentation on the draft City of Milpitas Trails, Pedestrian and Bike Master Plan, project number 3448, Fannie Yu, Associate Civil Engineer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good. Okay. Let me just. All right. So good evening, everyone. My name is Fannie Yu, and I'm an associate civil engineer with the engineering department. I am also the project manager for updating the city's trails, pedestrian, and bicycle master plan. Thank you for providing this opportunity to present to you an overview of the project and the public draft plan. Next slide, please. Now, the document will provide us support for future improvements, so they are more likely to be implemented. It also provides a vision and action plan to improve active transportation, such as biking and walking. We also want to show support for connectivity and access to destinations. We also want to integrate trails and biking to and from the new BART station, as well as other transit options. We also want to improve safety, provide ease of comfort, and to use active transportation for all ages and abilities. Next slide, please. Here are the main contents of the plan. I would like to highlight a few of these in the presentation. Our process started by exploring the existing infrastructure and programs of the city, and then we did an analysis based on gaps and needs of the city. We then provided a web map that offered people to place lines and dots, and we asked them questions like, where are you trying to go? What are your points of interest? Are there any areas or routes that pose a challenge to you? And then we took all that feedback and did another analysis and provided recommendations for improvements based on those comments. And then we went back out to the public to gauge input on whether these are the right solutions and how important these types of solutions were to them. And from there, we created a list of priority improvements and discussed potential policies and programs. And from there, we completed the public draft plan, which is now available for public review. Next slide, please. As the city continues to grow and new transportation technologies are introduced, we should also explore how this growth affects our connectivity and our relationship with transportation. Now, the last Trails Plan and Bicycle Master Plan were adopted in 1997 and 2009, respectively. I'm sure many people are aware that a lot has changed since that time, and it's a good time for us to update these two documents to reflect what is here right now. Previously, we were working on these plans separately, so there was the Trails Master Plan and a Bicycle Master Plan, but we soon realized that the trails and pedestrian and bicycle networks really relied heavily on each other. So we felt it made better sense to combine these all into one cohesive plan. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of what's new from the previously adopted plans, we have specific considerations for pedestrian network, which is something that wasn't included in either of the previous plans. This will also provide a comprehensive consideration for active modes of transportation. This plan will also reflect the changing conditions within Milpitas, including population growth and employment opportunities with the addition of the new BART and potential regional connections. We also did a further analysis of previously proposed trails based on changing conditions and standards and created a feasible list of those improvements. We also explored bicycle and scooter share, which has been quickly changing the landscape of readily available transportation throughout the Bay Area. Next slide, please. Through the various public engagement efforts, we learned a few key themes. Now, there's limited connectivity in today's active transportation network. Many people experience major barriers to travel, such as major roadways like the freeways, Calaveras Boulevard, Montague Expressway, and Great Mall Parkway. With the growing population and increased job opportunities, there's an increasing demand on the transportation system itself. And with the new BART station opening, many people see this as a new travel opportunity, and people want to know, how do I get there safely? There's also a desire for improved safety, increased travel options, and improved connections to destinations. Next slide, please. Now, based on the overall feedback that we've received, we've developed multiple networks for the trails and bicycles. Now, this map is like the best overview map that we have, showing how these two networks rely on each other. The recommendations shown were based on the key themes that I mentioned earlier, and we tried to keep in mind, where are the low stress connected networks? How can we help people of all ages and abilities get to where they want to go? And then maximizing the use of existing right-of-way and identifying near-term opportunities. These types of projects are easier to deliver as opposed to projects that require major reconfigurations of roadways. And then we also have the regional perspective. We want to make connections and continuity with San Jose and Fremont. And we also want to enhance multimodal travel opportunities, including connecting to transit. Next slide, please. Now, in the plan, we also identify spot improvements as well. Most of these are intersection improvements or trail access improvements. There's a multitude of improvements that you can employ, such as signal timing, upgrading of your curb ramps, high visibility crosswalks, green bicycle boxes, trailheads, and wayfinding signs, just to name a few. Now, these improvements should be assessed based on a location and also communities, and will need further design in the future. Next slide, please. Now, as mentioned earlier, the bike and scooter share are still fairly new to the city of Milpitas. Now, these types of travel modes are becoming popular in metropolitans like San Francisco and New York, and they're quickly finding their way throughout the entire Bay Area. In order to prepare Milpitas for these new technologies, we need to prepare a few guidelines that will guide future policies. The plan offers an opportunity to explore pilot programs, and we've identified a few locations that would be a great start for the pilot. We currently recommend fewer locations for the first year in order to work out any of the kinks of the policy, and it's recommended to reassess and expand the program after 1 year. Next slide, please. Now, the public draft is currently live and available for review and comments. We'll be posting the links to various websites, such as our web posts, social media posts, pretty much anywhere I can get the link to be posted. We'll also have a virtual open house, which will be a condensed version of a plan, so it's a little bit easier to digest all the information from the actual document. It should be live in about a week or two, and you should be able to find it through the link that will be provided. I'll paste the link into the chat of the Zoom. And then one of the things about the virtual open house is you'll be able to submit questions, answer surveys, polls. We're trying to collect as much data as possible. And we'll also answer all the questions at the public meeting on March 24th. And if all goes according to plan, the plan should be ready for adoption in early June of this year. Next slide, please. So I actually have a couple questions for the commission. I have them up right here. Are there any modes of travel that you feel strongly about that supports businesses, any particular streets or corridors? And then have any employees or employers express any interest in using public transportation in active modes, such as biking and walking to work? Are there any challenges to shift single rider vehicles to public transit? And what are ways we can encourage that mode shift for employees and employers? And I'm also open for questions.
So Fanny, we get all those questions and you're open for questions.
Yes.
Okay. What would you like to start first? Would you like to be open for questions first, or would you like to take questions first?
I would like to take your answers to my questions first, please.
Okay. So commissioners, just to repeat, are there any modes of travel that you feel strongly about that support businesses, any corridors or streets? Let's start there.
This is Vice Chair McNeil. So I think when the BART station, well, when COVID-19, the BART station's already open, but when COVID-19 is a little bit past us, there will be a lot of employees where I work who would be very interested in getting some transportation, whether that's a shuttle or ensuring the safety of being able to travel from the BART station to our location. We're less than a mile from the station, and so I'm sure that some of the employees would prefer to travel. The crossing Calaveras in a bike may be a little bit challenging for some of those. I'm sorry, not Calaveras, but Landis, Montague.
Thank you, Commissioner McNeil. Are there any other comments on this particular item as far as the first question? Well, I would like to add, Fanny, is that based on the design of Milpitas, the main throughway is Milpitas Boulevard. That is one street that you can pretty much get to all the different locations from in the city. And Milpitas Boulevard actually now runs directly to or parallel to BART on the backside because they opened it up all the way through. So the possibility, as Casey had mentioned, of shuttle service through Milpitas Boulevard, that my dog's going on a walk. He's very excited. He's super excited. He's yelling at her, hurry up, let's go. So that is a corridor street that I feel strongly about, whereas it's not as busy, at least not as of yet, but we may be able to potentially reduce the traffic with some sort of system utilizing that street in the center of town. And then the drop-offs at the corners, and particularly on that south side of town, which is right next to also in the area where the innovation district may be created as well.
Sounds good. Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome. The second question, was there another comment?
Yeah, Chair Norwood, I think your dog was trying to say that if there's parks adjacent to the trail, that would be very beneficial. So.
Yes, I believe that as well. Thank you for that, Commissioner McNeil. Second item was, have any employees or employers expressed any interest in using public and active transportation to and from work? Are there any challenges to single shift rider vehicles to public transit? I could probably speak to this point and say that public transit, are you referring to VTA?
Well, just in general, we really want to see what we can do to shift people from taking just their single cars and then participating in public transportation, just to get as many cars off the road as possible.
Cars. So if we think about the BART station, a couple of things are going to happen. There are going to be people that are going to drive to BART.
Mm-hmm. In their respective cities, wherever they're coming from.
Right. And then there are going to be people that are going to be leaving from BART around work time. So there will be additional traffic on that Montague area side, with people driving to and from BART. as far as the number of people coming into Milpitas, if we look at where our employment sectors are, there's the area, the corporate area. Oh, one other area I didn't mention. Is that Tasman? Great Mall Parkway down to Tasman, which takes you to the McCarthy Ranch side of Milpitas. So that's another area where folks from BART may want to look at shuttling instead of driving to work on that side of town. That is Tasman. That's Great America Parkway to Tasman. Yep. That side of town, because that is where more of the manufacturing or computer science, Cisco's out there, and a couple of other organizations are out there as well. The biggest challenge that I personally see to shifting single rider vehicles to public transit is convenience.
Okay.
I currently, I do some work over at Stanford University, and they encourage us, they offer me the ability to commute in a shuttle ride, a shuttle car with other employees that live in the area. They also offer me what's that pass? It's a commuter pass that allows me to potentially take either public transit, the bus system, or the light rail. Clipper card, I think is the Clipper card. And then an incentive not to drive our cars, because the biggest challenge that I see, especially the people that live in the Bay Area, is convenience. It's a big difference between getting home in 45 minutes or an hour to 2 to 3 hours. So that is one of the challenges that I see, the shifting single rider vehicle to public transportation, the frequency of public transportation and the timeline of them delivering them to a reasonable location. And the final question for the commission is, what are ways we can encourage this mode shift from employees to employers?
So I have a question regarding some of the, I guess they're the pay per bike, like Jump and Lift, those type of bicycle companies. I mean, do we have some of those near the BART station, and plus maybe a map of the trails and how to get to certain places? Maybe that would encourage people at the BART station to, instead of, getting an Uber from one place to another, perhaps even use one of those bikes if they knew not only where to get a bike, but also a trail. Because I have a feeling once COVID-19 is past us, then they'll be very common for people to use the BART station.
Right. So currently the BART station does have a section for these types of like bike and scooter share systems. What we don't have right now is a policy in place for Milpitas. So there's obviously permitting for these companies, right? We also care about insurance and safety for everybody. So we want to have some kind of policy in place to ensure that these companies are operating at like best practices and safety for everyone. So that's one of the goals of the plan, is to identify these guidelines so that we can set up this policy. And hopefully, and then also the trails and bicycle routes, we do have a map for them. And hopefully if we adopt it in June, it'll all be ready to go.
I'd like to add something to the Vice Chair's comment, if I may.
Yes.
We have been approached by Spin and Bird, one very recently and one pre-pandemic. So there is interest by these rideshare, bike share companies rather, to come into Milpitas. And at the moment, it's pretty clear that we're not getting the ridership that's coming through our transit center, because many offices and R&D places of business are not operating at 100%. But there is going to be a time when people return to their offices or place of businesses, including R&D, light industrial space. We do anticipate that transit center is going to be a very busy place. So we'll be looking at mobility solutions in partnership with Fenny and her team. Also, through a real estate transaction that we took to council a couple of years ago, the city has $200,000 that can be used toward a shuttle in the future. I have talked to several larger employers to inquire as to whether there's interest in a future TMA, which is a Transportation Management Association setup. And there has been interest. Of course, what we would attempt to do is to have a partnership in that regard. Fanny and her team did a study, pretty good study about a year and a half or so ago in that regard. So there is interest by the employment community or employers, but we'll have to see how things go once we get back to the office.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's just do a quick time check. The next item is at 5:15 approximately, so we have a couple of more minutes on this topic. The majority of traffic in Milpitas, based on this pedestrian and bike plan update, also the transit plan identifies Calaveras, Montague Expressway, and where else as far as areas where there is significant traffic?
Probably Great Mall Parkway.
Great Mall Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
Montague Expressway is county, correct?
Yes.
And so Calaveras is county or state?
It's state up to North Park, Victoria, and then it's ours from up to the hills.
And people are coming off of major freeways, interstates, in order to use Milpitas as a throughway. And so that's where a significant portion of our traffic is coming from. Is that correct?
Yes.
So in your presentation, one of the things that you had mentioned was the spot areas. I'm sure most of us are aware of the recent tragedy that's happened in Milpitas. And does the spot area approach potentially address those types of scenarios where, so that there's a possibility, again, it was a freak accident, those types of things, but is there something that could potentially be done to, or in this plan that looks to address those types of things?
Right. So in the plan, we also look at safety statistics and accident data. So we looked at those locations, and what we've done is, if you look further into the plan, we kind of identified like these red zones where, you know, pedestrians have difficulty crossing, or if there's been accident data supporting that these areas need to be improved. And what we want to do is look at each individual intersection, because no two intersections are exactly the same. So we want to make sure we apply the right improvement for that area, so that, you know, we can improve like safe crossing and safe crossing as well for bicycles as well.
Thank you. Are there any other items on this agenda?
I had one last question. I'm sorry. I saw on your map a cycle track. Is that a track, or is that just a path?
So there's different like bicycle classifications. So a cycle track is usually an off-street path, and it's usually separated by some kind of barrier. So sometimes there's like a separate curb. What we're looking to do is separate vehicles from bicyclists. So for example, a class 2 bike lane is an on-street path with like lane markings on the road. And usually that's the only separation there is. Like, you know, it's really easy to hit a bicyclist that way. So a cycle track is totally separate, off-street, and it's almost similar to a pedestrian network.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Fanny, did you, hopefully we were able to contribute, answer some of your questions, and
yes,
it sounds like from the response from the commissioners that you've been able to answer ours. We do have 1 minute left. We can go over a little bit. Is there anything from Councilmember Dominguez on this subject?
Thank you very much, Chair Norwood. The council did spend many hours answering these questions, and so I know I gave a full report of thought process, very similar to some of the things that have been identified. I also was very excited to hear of the plan. I'm not too sure if many of you know, but I recently joined the bicycle community, and it has been a very different experience. And so I definitely gave some of my feedback based as a one-time, not at one time, a brand new one-time user, where it was my first day out that Tuesday. And so I definitely identified some things that I never honestly would have thought of before, but because I am that person that they are targeting, I definitely included some things around safety, signage, and using technology to address the first-time trail users like me on how to safely use these trails and where are they at. In terms of the traffic congestion and those areas, we were able to identify them through the map and the report that staff shared. And so I invite any of the commissioners, if you would like to see my full comments on this, to please visit. We'll make sure that staff, could we make sure that we give the date of when that council meeting was? We've had a council meeting every single Tuesday, and now I feel like it's a blur. I want to say our last meeting, but we're definitely really busy. And so if there's any that would like to, thank you. If you would like to ask me any questions online, please know that I am available. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Dominguez. And the final statement is that, Fanny, are you guys in communication with the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition?
Yes, we are. We've received their comments on the plan as well.
Awesome, thank you. With that said, is there a motion to receive the presentation?
Vice Chair McNeil, so moved.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Rice will second it.
We have a motion, we have a second. Nicole?
Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Rice, Commissioner Rice, you may be.
Yes, sorry, having technical difficulties.
Thank you. No worries. Commissioner Mundra
Yes.
and Commissioner Aflaki.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a motion and we second, and we have unanimous acceptance of the presentation. Thank you, Fanny. Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item 9B, update on the research. Item 9B, update on research and recommendations for hotel and travel industries. Alex Andrade, Director of Economic Development.
Thank you, Chair Norwood. I'll wait for, and there it is. So it's my pleasure to discuss what is now known as surviving the pandemic and building resilient hotel and travel industries in Silicon Valley. A hotel, it's a guide for local government and industry leaders. This has been many, many months in the works. Last summer, we collaborated with various partners, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But the reason we got engaged is that we know that hotel and travel industries play a significant role in Silicon Valley and in Milpitas. So just as a reminder, Milpitas is home to 20 hotels, and these hotels create really, really quality jobs. And aside from the jobs, they generate some pretty substantial revenues for the city of Milpitas. Just to give you a little scale, that could mean up to $14 to $15 million of annual revenues for our general fund. And those are dollars that would be spent on city services and community facilities. You will see in just a little bit, or hear it in just a little bit, that things are changing quite a bit through the pandemic. But anyways, but today we're going to talk about a very important public and private partnership that we developed with Santa Clara County, the SVITA group, which is our basically our local industry association, which stands for Silicon Valley Economic Development Alliance, and the Silicon Valley Business Travel Association, of which some of the members are actually here, that have formed a task force. And they are Lisa Shenefeld, Kunal Kandwala, and Daryl March. They're actually joining us, so we'll be able to bring them on in just a little bit. So Mike or Rochelle, next slide, please.
Alex, while we're looking at that, quick question. And when you say hotel, does that include hotel, motel, inn, all of those terms, or is it unique to one particular type?
No, good question. Yeah, it's all inclusive. I will say, however, that we do get TOT, which is transit occupancy tax, from short-term rentals. That is your Airbnbs, your VRBOs, and those types. We're not including the short-term rentals, that segment of overnight stays. We're specifically talking about the various classes of lodging in hotels.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you have in front of you here is really the reason why we're having this discussion today. And it's because of COVID-19. When we issued the report early this year, the CDC reported over 19 and a half, or close to 19 and a half million Americans had been diagnosed with COVID, and over 337,000 Americans have died. Since then, and I'm only talking about less than 40 days, since then, we've increased to 26.5 million people that have been diagnosed with COVID, and over 455 Americans have passed away. Just to give you a sense of what that means in the last 40 days, that means that over 7 million Americans were diagnosed with COVID. And I'm talking about just January and last week in February. And that means also that 118,000 Americans have died in the last 5+ weeks. So obviously we're very much still in this fight. The reason we're here today is because it's clearly affecting our hotel and travel industries. And as I was mentioning earlier, the hotel and travel industries are incredibly important for us. And they've probably been the hardest hit businesses in the pandemic. So we've established a task force with some of the folks that I just mentioned earlier. It's the Silicon Valley Travel and Industry Leaders Task Force. They have helped us, they've guided us in conducting research. We developed a hotel operators business survey, and based on all of the learnings from the last few months, we've developed guidelines and recommendations within 4 different categories. And really the purpose of all of this is advocacy, leadership, and making sure to bring policymakers and public officials together with those that are in the hotel industries and travel industries. Next slide, please. What you have in front of you is a CBRE. They are a real estate brokerage house. We're looking at data from Q3 2020. We looked at San Jose's lodging market, mostly because they're not only the largest city in Santa Clara County, but they're obviously the largest city in the entire Bay Area. So there's really 3 segments of metrics here. There's hotel occupancy, which is in that column OCC, average daily rate, which measures the average rental revenue earned from an occupied room per day, and that's under ADR. But specifically, I want to turn your attention to RevPAR, and that's revenue per available room, and that measures hotel performance by assessing a property's ability to fill its available rooms at an average rate. And that is what we've learned is probably the most important metric. And you're looking at San Jose's lodging market taking a hit of almost 64%. And let me explain why that's important to us. So we looked at 11 different cities in Silicon Valley and cities located throughout Santa Clara County and portions of Alameda. These 11 cities a couple of years ago were projected to make revenues with hotel tax revenues $145 million. But if you take a look at the that RevPAR number of let's just say 60%, these cities are going to have to reduce those projections by 60%. So 11 cities that were expecting to generate $145 million in revenue for a regional economy will actually be a reduction of $58 million in revenue in one fiscal year if we were to use a 60% decrease. That's massive for us. And again, we only have various revenue mechanisms. Property tax tends to be pretty stable. And then we have hotel tax and sales tax, among other sales or rather revenue sources. But hotel tax and sales tax very important. They generate a significant amount of money for the city, for city services and facilities, but they tend to be volatile. Next slide, please. So as I indicated, we developed a hotel operator survey, was conducted late last summer into the early part of the fall. We had approximately 70 responses that came in. We asked 17 questions. I'm only going to highlight a few for brevity today. The many things that we've learned, the one that completely sticks out to me is that the hotel and travel industries are multipliers. So we've learned that for a person, a guest that goes to a hotel and spends $100 per night for that overnight stay, that hotel guest will spend another $222 during that trip. And it'll be on transportation, on food and beverage, and other goods and services. It's obviously a very important multiplier for us. What we're looking at here on the screen is which business sectors describe companies that frequently stay at our hotels. We're in Silicon Valley. Technology is our economic driver, so we are not known to be a leisurely travel destination. We are very much a business travel destination. So on the screen, you clearly see that the corporate community does well here. Other sectors right now, construction and healthcare, and that was during the survey period. Next slide, please. A real important question that we asked had to do with at what occupancy rate would these hotel operators be able to rehire staff? We received these notices from the state that indicate that anytime a business in Milpitas is going to lay off or temporarily lay off 50 employees or more, by law, they have to provide us a warning. So we've received countless numbers of these warn notices, as they're called. And for the most part, they've been related to temporary furlough. So our hope is that some of these hotel staff members are able to come back. But when we asked this question about occupancy rate, those mostly responded at 50 to 60%. When their hotel reaches that occupancy rate, that range rather, they would be able to start rehiring staff. And then the second most indicated that they would be rehiring staff when their hotel reached an occupancy rate of 70 to 80%. We were also surprised to learn that there were quite a few that responded at 80% or greater. As you can see at our next slide, please. We are nowhere near those levels at this point. This survey question is asking exactly what is your average weekly occupancy rate, and you can see that the majority of respondents had occupancy rates of less than 10% and up to 40%. Others experienced occupancy rates of 40 to 50%. And then hotel occupancy, just to remind you, hotel occupancy is the number of occupied rooms divided by the number of available rooms that physically exist in a hotel. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we partnered with our Silicon Valley hotel and travel industry leaders, and we ultimately started with 7 different categories that we were researching, but landed on 4 categories. And they are known as Clean 365, sensitivity to changing and adapting industries, regional partnerships, and marketing and promotion. So we're going to get into this information just shortly. I'll let you know that we came up with a total of 68 recommendations. We're only going to highlight a few recommendations per each category in the interest of time. Next slide, please. Clean 365, that's really looking at how we can help the hotel and travel industries open safely and productively. This is really looking at the state and the county's role in keeping people safe through public health and safety measures. And so recently, as you recall, we spent almost 2 months on the state's regional stay-at-home order. It really required that the hotel businesses locally stay open, but only really allowed to receive 2 types of guests. And that's one being for anybody that's traveling beyond 150 miles outside of the Bay Area, have to come back and quarantine for X amount of days. The other traveler is an essential traveler. So what we've seen certainly is construction workers and people in the healthcare industry. So since the regional stay-at-home order was lifted on January 26th, we have now reverted back to the blueprint for a safer economy. We are back to the purple tier. And I'll just mention a few guidelines and recommendations that we have focused on. The Hotel and Travel Industries Task Force, it has become such an important component to our overall learning and coming up with these recommendations. It's really an important time for us to expand this task force. And so we'll be making that call to action at a presentation that we will be giving at Thursday's Silicon Valley Business Travel Association luncheon. We also want to help policymakers identify hotel and travel industries as priority industries. As I mentioned before, local government, these travel industries are not only a multiplier, but they also provide really good quality jobs. And obviously, in terms of revenue, they help us in the well-being of our economy. So we want to make sure that our policymakers and public officials understand and make these industries a priority. And then we recognize that because of some of the changes that are happening due to public health and safety measures, some hotels have had to refurnish their HVAC systems or add additional expense to systems like air filtration systems. And so we believe that we should be looking at various sources for funding for infrastructure improvements. Next slide, please. So the next category is increased sensitivity to changing and adapting industries. This is really looking at being resilient. And so moving forward with resiliency planning to make sure that when another emergency or catastrophe happens, that we will be better able to respond. We do know, based on research that McKinsey has done, that travel is going to return. They do believe that business travel in particular will return in phases. It's going to be spurred by proximity and reason for traveling. At this point, when you look at this chart to the left, under sector and early recovery, manufacturing and construction are both doing very well at this point. And of course, the healthcare industry is also doing well. There are changes that have been happening. A lot of us are working remotely. We're communicating through this screen right now. So work from home is starting to become ubiquitous. So it does feel like it's going to change those that work in an office. And a lot of people are feeling like we won't have a particular need for office, but our task force and others have been telling us that it is going to return. We will have a return back to the office, and people are feeling isolated. And so while we work in business-to-business relationships, which we call B2B, we also have human-to-human, H-to-H relationships that we need to foment. And so I think we're going to get back to that sometime this year. In terms of guidelines and recommendations, the local San Jose airport has started pre-flight testing. Various airports throughout the nation are doing more and more of that. We also would like to see more of that happen. We think that diversifying offerings in hotel rooms might be something that hotel operators can do. Throughout the last 11 months, it appears that extended stay hotels are doing much better than luxury hotels and other types of hotels. So perhaps some of these hotel operators will want to add kitchenettes to their rooms, or maybe take meeting space and convert it to hotel rooms. And so from the public sector side, we would welcome that, obviously, and would like to expedite permits if possible. There are hotels that unfortunately have idle kitchens at this point. They are not able to utilize their restaurants or their kitchens. And so there's what's known as ghost kitchens. There's a need for startup chefs to utilize space. So these hotel operators can rent their kitchens out for food delivery and preparation to the startup chef community. Next slide, please. The third category is regional partnerships, and we're talking about regional partnerships with, of course, SJC, our San Jose International Airport, the county, Visit California, which is the state's tourism office, local and regional convention and visitors bureaus. We would also include SFIDA, as I mentioned earlier, the Silicon Valley Economic Development Alliance, as well as the Silicon Valley Business Travel Association. Next slide, please. We've partnered with Scott Wintner. He is with San Jose Airport. He provided us this chart, which I thought is very telling. It looks at various recessions that we have experienced here in the Bay Area with the dot-com boom and bust, of course, 9/11, the SARS outbreak, and the most recent Great Recession. And what I'm trying to really convey here is that the airport has been able to bounce back after these recessions. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but we've been able to do that. Just to give you a sense of where our airport has been, on a pre-pandemic day, we could see anywhere between 16,000 to 26,000 people traversing through our airport. But during the pandemic, we've seen somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 daily travelers through the airport, obviously due to the initial shelter-in-place order. On 4th of July, there was a high of 6,000 people that traversed through the airport that weekend. But we're very low compared to the usual travelers. Again, into scale, the airport would see anywhere between 16,000 to 26,000 daily travelers, and we're not there yet. But we are hopeful now that there are 3 different vaccines being distributed. Next slide, please. In terms of our regional partnerships, again, I'm only highlighting a few of what are, I believe, 68 recommendations. So start and stop business cycles that we're all experiencing are very disruptive to business operations and business activities, and it's expensive to have to hire staff and then let go of them a week later or 2 weeks later because we've had to become more restrictive. And so it's really important to have policymakers at the county level and at the state level to disseminate clear information in order to reduce that uncertainty. We've talked about the partnership with SJC. It's a real important one. They were really successful in developing a safe travel video. We can send you a link to that. We won't get into it right now, but it really depicts a person arriving at the airport and going through the counter and security, actually getting into a plane and landing, and a safe process. And we touched on the convention and visitors bureaus. We also want to make sure to connect more with business travel managers. Many of our high-tech companies have actual business travel managers. So we want to share information and promote corporate events, and obviously to stimulate the local economy and regional economy when we are able to bring back business travel. Next slide, please. So with our 4th and final category, this is marketing and promotions. We learned from the San Jose Airport, and together we came up with this saying that we are ready when you're ready. And this is a tagline to let the travel community know that we're sensitive to the fact that people aren't feeling confident in going through an airport or staying at local hotels, but it's also being sensitive to the fact that when they feel ready, the local and regional hotel and travel industry is ready to receive them. So again, we want to ensure to communicate clearly and often. We want to restore that trust and confidence. It's going to take time, and it'll best happen through transparency and empathy. I mentioned virtual tour. There are hotels in the desert here in Palm Springs that have developed what is known with Visit California as Buy Now, Stay Later. They are these bond type programs where you pay $100, and in 60 days, the value of that $100 becomes $150 that can be used at this hotel while they're staying there. We also would like to create a regional promotional effort that we're calling Love with Silicon Valley. And we just want to showcase all the really fun things that are happening around the Valley. And while right now we're in the pandemic, there's not a lot to post about, but we will be getting out of this environment hopefully soon. Next slide, please. We have developed a timeline for recovery, and there are 3 different timelines that we're looking at. We started with short term, which is really taking the first 6 months of the year, and we have communicated along with some of our task force members that this is going to be a period that overlaps with vaccine distribution, which is clearly underway. Some business restrictions have been lifted, where just in the last week, dining is back outdoors. And thankfully, new coronavirus case numbers are dropping. And then the midterm will look at the last 6 months of the year, and that's when vaccines are becoming more widely distributed, schools and offices begin to reopen, and hotels will start to see more bookings and reservations for larger conferences. And then long term, we're really looking at a 2-year period from January 2022 through December 2023. This is where we start to see entertainment, sports, conferences being reintroduced. Business travel begins to appear in larger volume. We will likely see hotspots of the coronavirus, but we hope to identify it quickly and suppress that. And then this is a period when the state fully lifts any restrictions, at which point we would hopefully see some level of normalcy. Next slide, please. I mentioned that on Thursday, we'll be giving a presentation to the Silicon Valley Business Travel Association, and we will have a call to action. We're going to ask folks to join the task force, and that we'll make it a regional one. So it'll be a challenge, and I hope to get anywhere between 5 to 10 new task force members, and the commitment won't take a whole lot of time. It'll allow those new task force members to begin to ideate with public officials and really be an advocate and thought leader for their respective industries. So we also want to remind them, obviously, that they'll have to restructure and rethink their operations due to the fact that we're going to be living with COVID for some time now, and that resiliency planning is going to be really important for them. And then the last call to action would be that they get vaccinated, and it's not necessarily for them, but it's for everybody because we're better together. So next slide, please. This is the last slide, and so this is the recommendation slide. I won't read what's on the screen, but that is the end of the presentation. Again, we have representatives from the Silicon Valley Task Force that are with us, Lisa, Kunal, and Daryl, in case anybody has any questions for them as a task force or any questions for us as staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, for the presentation about sharing the research and the recommendations for the hotel and travel industries. I'd like to open up the floor for discussion to the commissioners as well as council member. So forgive, do you guys allow public comments on items if people raise their hand?
Yes, we would welcome your feedback.
Okay. So Nicole, are there any comments from the public?
Chair Norwood, no, there are not.
Okay, and just for the record, if I don't ask that after each item, please flag me down and say, hey, we got to ask for the public for the comment to make sure that they don't feel alienated in this process.
Absolutely. I've been keeping an eye on the raised hands.
Awesome, thank you. As we now we open the floor up to the commissioners.
Alex, it's Commissioner Rice. A couple of questions. First of all, I think it was a wonderful presentation, so very excited to see that. Didn't know if it would be possible to share, because I think that there's some valuable information. And then the second part is the task force. Is that just open to the hoteliers? The people that you're going to try and secure at your presentation? Is it possible if perhaps somebody from our office from marketing would be able to be part of that as well?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Rice. Oh, yes, ma'am, Commissioner Rice, I'm sorry. Let me get to your first question about sharing the document. I did send an email with both a link as well as a PDF. I can resend that to the Economic Development and Trade Commission. That is not a problem. And then in regards to the task force question, yeah, for now, it has been industry leaders in travel and hotel. But given that your marketing person at Great Mall, I think could be a really great addition to this task force. So we understand that there are people that get into buses and visit Great Mall for shopping. And now that Legoland is going to be opening sometime in the future, we don't have a specific opening date yet. We believe that it will be a regional draw. So I think that the answer would be a yes. We could certainly ask our task force members that are on right now. We have Lisa, Kamal, and Daryl to see if they have any thoughts.
Good afternoon. This is Lisa Shenefeld. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of the meeting today. It's very interesting, and we enjoyed Alex's presentation. Certainly widening the scope, from the starting point, we consider the task force as well as the documentation to be fluid, as changes, as time evolves. We would welcome, anyone who would have an interest in helping us proceed.
Yeah, it's very interesting, the one slide that you showed, Alex, with the corporate traveler, because that is, one thing that has been apparently clear with a lot of the work at home here, and just with the, adapting of Zoom and other teleconferencing, that visitor has not been here, as well as the international visitor that, we've been lacking as well. So I think that based on the conversations that we've had, we engage a lot with the technology companies, fingers crossed, that they'll be back in the offices in July. That's kind of the target date right now. Now, whether all the corporate travel returns with that, we shall see. But it was an interesting kind of call out, because that was a big source of traffic for us that really, it just went from, a high to basically a zero at this point. So yeah, and then I would love our marketing, my assistant, she's very much into travel. She studied abroad in London, and she's very much into tourism and would love, to be part of something like this.
Great to hear.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you,
Commissioner Rice.
Are there any other comments from any of the other commissioners?
This is Vice Chair McNeil. So a couple of questions, Alex. On the RevPAR slide, it didn't look like we were forecasting coming back to normal until 2024. And is that because companies are accustomed to the Zoom, and we think there's going to be less travel in 24, or do we think there's still lingering effects of COVID at that time? What was the reasoning behind it being not catching up until then?
Yeah, we actually have another slide as a backup slide, and I don't know if Mike or Rochelle can see the slide that says recovery. It has a post on it. Yes, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. There it is. Yes. Oh, I didn't highlight this because it was just too much time, and I was trying to keep my presentation to less. I was trying to keep it to less than 15 minutes. But Commissioner McNeil, that's exactly right. So we have been getting data from one quarter to the next, and I think there's just so many variables, especially all of last year. The hotel and travel industry, while the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, has been out as a stimulus program, as well as the EIDL, the Economic Disaster Injury Recovery Loan, those industries haven't really been strong recipients of those dollars. So unfortunately, we have some hotels that are not going to make it. And right now, if you look at this chart, we're obviously barely going to be going upwards in 2021. So we have a ways to go. But yeah, there's an issue with trust and confidence within the traveling world. Again, if people aren't ready to go to the airport and get into a space that they fear could be a super spreader location, or get into an airplane, although the air filtering in an airplane is probably one of the best that we have. But people just aren't going to be ready there for a while. So there's lots of variables. I feel like this third vaccine with Johnson & Johnson, it just came out recently. Perhaps there's just wider distribution for people. Obviously, that's not moving as quickly as we initially thought back in late November or December. So I think there's many variables to why it may take some time to get to a 2022, 2023 level of normalcy. I would look to my task force also to provide info.
I'd like to just do a quick time check, because it looks like this topic is going to run a little bit longer. The agenda said that we were going to end at 6:05, but we're looking at closer to 6:15. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yes, I'm okay.
Okay, awesome.
Chair Norwood, one of our guest speakers, Daryl Marsh, would like to say something.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. To address specifically the sort of the recovery period, there's going to be waves of production that'll come in from different what we call market segments. We expect that this year we'll start to see recovery in the corporate individual travel market, and certainly we're already seeing in construction and medical. One of the more significantly impacted segments is group travel. It'll take some time before group travel and large conventions are brought to the city in the form of citywides, and even certainly San Jose, Santa Clara, even San Francisco, the citywides have an influence on not just occupancy in our area, but particularly the rate. When we speak of rate, we're talking about both occupancy and the associated ADR, average daily rate that comes in, and those both contribute to pump more revenue into TOT. So until we see a recovery in the convention side, which builds sort of compression in the midweek and in some cases on the weekends, you won't see average rates start to rise in this market. It's just really about supply and demand, and until those average rates come up, we won't see the same type of revenue, RevPAR, that we saw in 19.
Thank you, Daryl. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners?
One last question for Alex. On your occupancy rate time frame, what was I'm sorry, you had a slide on occupancy rates which showed anywhere from 10% to 80%. What time frame is that? I didn't see a time frame on that slide.
Are you specifically asking of when the the hotel business operator survey was out for respondents?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we initially issued the survey in what I think is around August, and we received roughly 40 or so responses, and then we reissued it closer to November, and then we reached closer to 70 responses. So in that time frame between August and November of last year.
It was a wide range. I mean, you had some 80% and some at 10%. I was really surprised.
Yeah, I would venture to say that the 80% or greater than 80% was likely due to extended stay hotels.
Thank you, Mr. Andrade. At this time, Is there a motion to accept the presentation?
Commissioner Rice will accept the presentation.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second from Commissioner Deepak. Nicole?
Yep, I'll take the roll. Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Rice,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra. I believe you're muted, Commissioner Mundra.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Aswapi.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second and we have hold on, we have Daryl's hand up.
That might have been from a previous comment.
Okay, no problem. Then we have a motion and a second and motion carries. Thank you very much, commissioners, for your support. And Alex, please do me a favor. The next time that we pre-meet, I want to talk about duration on slides. The presentations are pretty dense, and so it's really difficult to kind of hold the questions or document them all while we're going through the presentations really, really fast. So we want to figure out how we can make that a little bit smoother for everyone participating. Item 9D, update on Small Business Development Center webinar series. Chris Horton, Regional Lending Specialist Manager of NorCal Small Business Development Center.
Chair Norwood,
Yes.
it's item 9C. It's a small business spotlight.
Oh, 9C. Oh, it's been updated. Yep, I'm sorry about that. I missed it. 9C, Small Business Spotlight Program Update. Alex Andrade.
We'll have Nicole give this update. Thank you.
Yes, so I'll be giving a brief update. This is not the first time the Commission has heard about the Milpitas Small Business Spotlight Program, so I'll keep it relative. All right, so the Milpitas Small Business Spotlight Program was launched in response to COVID-19 to help support our local business community during this economic and health crisis. COVID, as we know, has forced many businesses to have to pivot to an e-commerce business model. And the Spotlight program can be a way to help all businesses develop and strengthen their digital presence to continue promoting their goods and services during a time when the business community is constantly experiencing having to reopen and close and reopen and close due to the constantly changing county and state guidelines. 15 small businesses were selected via a lottery, and each will receive a free 90-second professionally produced marketing video featuring their business that will then be posted across all of City of Milpitas's social media channels, and each business will be receiving a copy of the promotional video for their own use as well. Our wonderful videographer, Bill Rowland, he has completed the first 3 of the 15, and those feature AJR Watch Repair, Aisha Diagnostics, and the Montessori School of Silicon Valley. And this upcoming weekend, we will be getting together to film 3 more businesses, and those are Black Cat Comics, Trisha Pediatrics, and Huntford Printing and Graphics, and we'll be working on our 3rd group of businesses to film in March. And in a moment here, I'm going to ask Mike to please show those 3 spotlight videos. And after we see the first set of videos in a moment, I'd like to invite the commissioners to review the draft program survey to help our Office of Economic Development understand the impact of the Spotlight program on our participating businesses. So I'll go through that survey later, but first I'd like to ask Mike to please go through the 3 videos.
Nicole, in the interest of time, we might do 2 of the 3.
Welcome to AJR Watch Repair Services in Milpitas, the place to go for all your watch needs. We're proud of our ability to repair and maintain any quartz or mechanical watch, including pocket watches, at very reasonable prices. See us to replace batteries, clean and lubricate watch movements, replace movements, crystals, stems, crowns, hands, bands, and more. Don't miss our selection of types and colors of leather and metal bands. We also repair clocks and make keys. After more than 28 years in the watch repair business, we've won our customers' trust for our skill and great customer service. AJR Watch Repair Services is open weekdays, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We're located inside Seafood City on Landis Avenue. While your watch is being serviced, shop or dine at a variety of nearby restaurants. Be sure to call to learn more. AJR Watch Repair Services in Milpitas, the place to go for all your watch needs.
We are Aisha Diagnostics, providing the best drug, alcohol, and DNA testing services. Logistics providers, trucking companies, cannabis dispensaries, and others who employ drivers rely on us to stay compliant with federal and state drug regulations. We keep employers informed of current substance abuse laws and to stay compliant. We also help families with drug, alcohol, paternity, and other DNA testing needs. Aisha Diagnostics helps Milpitas employers maintain safe, drug-free workplaces, especially for critical roles. Additionally, employers save on workers' compensation insurance rates with our workplace drug policy. Located on South Park Victoria Drive, near the Parktown Shopping Plaza, Aisha Diagnostics is open weekdays 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and Saturdays 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Be sure to call or visit us online. We are Aisha Diagnostics for the best drug, alcohol, and DNA testing services.
Mike, actually, for the interest of time, maybe we can just stick to those two videos if that's all right. Could you instead show the survey questions, please? Thank you. Great. So, Commissioners, in front of you, you see the draft Small Business Spotlight Program survey. We've developed a series of questions to try to gauge the impact of the Spotlight program on our local business community, including questions like, how did COVID-19 affect your business? Did your business have a marketing plan before the pandemic? What about during the pandemic? And do you feel Spotlight has helped your business? And have you gained a better awareness about your business because of the program? So please take a moment to review these questions, and we'll be happy to take any feedback and comments to strengthen the survey.
Nicole, was there a question there as to how long the business has been around? I don't see it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We don't have a question for that. So you'd like to have a better idea of how long the businesses have been in Milpitas?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions about the videos themselves are great too.
Nicole, not necessarily about the business, just in general, what did you define as a small business? Was it a certain revenue? Just curious about that.
It was any business that had less than 50 full-time employees.
That was independently owned outside of a franchise? We didn't differentiate between independent or franchise. And when you say marketing business strategy, are you referring to, was it digital or any marketing advertising strategy at all?
We were trying to see if they had an online presence before the pandemic, so that would be a digital marketing strategy.
Because you just asked general marketing. I know that we are in the age of the internet and stuff like that, but as you learned, there are some businesses that just they had a Facebook page or they had a review on Yelp, but they didn't actually have an online presence. So shouldn't that be a bit more specific to that, and then asking them the different types of online strategies that they have, whether it was social media, physical website, Yelp, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, we'll split up the questions to see what kind of online presence they had, if any.
Okay, thank you. Looks good. The videos were great. They were to the point. Talked about the business, the highlights of the business, showed a physical person. That was great stuff. So with that, I'd like to, is there a motion to accept the presentation?
Chair Norwood, we'd like to make sure that we see if there's any public comments.
Awesome. Nicole, are there any public comments?
No public comments, Chair Norwood.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder on that, Alex.
Of course.
Is there a motion to accept the presentation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Nicole? Yes.
I'll do the roll, starting with Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil.
Great videos. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Rice,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundro,
Yes, great work. Thank you.
and thank you, and Commissioner Aswafi.
Yes, great presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item 9D. That is update the Small Business Development Center webinar series. Chris Horton, Regional Lending Specialist Manager of the NorCal Small Business Development Center.
So, hey, Commissioner Norwood or Chair Norwood, it's good to see you again. I have had the opportunity of working with Alex and his team in regards to bringing much needed valuable information and tools and resources to the business community of Milpitas. So what we've worked on is a monthly recurring webinar series and looking at topics that are relevant to the current economic environment. So today we're naturally dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, and so wanting to bring access and information about things as far as small business financing, both disaster relief financing or traditional financing to help businesses through this challenging time. We've scheduled our first one for the end of February, and that'll be on a rolling monthly basis. So it'll probably be the last month of each month. That gives us ample enough time to promote and market any of the webinars that we'll be doing. But we have a PowerPoint presentation before you to give you an idea of some of the topics that we thought would be of value to the business community. So as you can see in February, small business financing, typically small business financing are for those businesses that either will be starting or will be expanding. We've had obviously a significant reduction in the amount of businesses that are starting right now, but then we have a lot of businesses that are starting to transition due to the COVID pandemic. And so having resources to help them through that time. The SBA programs and resources, talk about business resilience and retooling planning. And then you have other disaster relief assistance from the state of California. We are doing debt and credit restoration. We do have some businesses that are expanding during this time right now. BizBuy is a partner that has a platform if you're looking to sell a business or buy a business, that they have resources there. Business Valuation, if you're going to be exiting your business right now during this downturn, that you have an accurate valuation. Workforce development, if you got to bring folks back to work or you got to train up the folks that you have with you right now, and providing resources for you there. Jumpstart's a state program. International trade is a focus of the Small Business Development Center. And then with the many restaurants that we have in Milpitas, we have a specific regional for Northern California restaurant program of folks that cover all aspects of the food and beverage industry. So with that, Chair Norwood, that's my presentation. Just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention that we are going to be providing webinars and bringing information to the city of Milpitas for the business community.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for the brief overview of what the SBA, you're with the SBDC, correct?
Yeah, SBDCs, we are funded by SBA. We are their consulting arm. So we're the largest consulting agency for SBA across the nation.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners on this topic?
So Chris, I might have missed this, but who will be giving the presentations? Or is that people from your group, or you're looking for other outside speakers?
No, it'll be from the SBDC and SBA. We have representatives from the state disaster relief program, biz buy sell representatives, but basically it'll be certified business advisors that are part of the SBA and SBDC ecosystem.
All right, thank you.
Alex, thank you, Chris, for that feedback. I'd like to add to the agenda for a future agenda, Alex. I'd like to hear about how a lot of these dots are going to get connected. In particular, you had mentioned in your presentation about the hotel, and Chris is mentioning about the number of the webinars that are going to happen afterwards. And it seems like there's a missing what connects it after you guys get these things launched and what keeps it going. We know that each of these organizations have limited resources to maintain or continually to do the outreach and those types of things to refer back. So I'd really like to, at some point, figure out how we add to the agenda how these things have some level of continued momentum after these things move forward. Initially after the webinars and what may be the action items for them. So we can take that offline, but I appreciated all the webinars that Chris had shown. One that I would add kind of ties in with what Nicole was talking about, and that's the marketing and advertising in terms of the businesses. So I don't know if that's on the SBDC side or the city side, but it seems like there's some synergy there that may be lost that can be combined in this particular area.
Sure, Chair Norwood, it's Chris Horton. We do have marketing as well. These were just some of the topics that Alex and I and the team came up with. There's so much more when you talk about website design, e-commerce, HR, marketing, all of that is there. And we already have the programming set up for after we host a webinar. So happy to share that with you or Alex, however you like that to be done.
Okay, all right, excellent, because that has to get into the pipeline, introduce, stay in the pipeline, and the pipeline has to be reminded on a continuous basis if we want it to grab hold. Obviously, folks are very, very busy. Being mindful of the time, is there a motion to receive this report or this presentation?
You can also check to see if there's any public comment as well.
Nicole's going to do that.
There's no public comment at this time.
Both of you guys get to yell at me on that. Seeing that there are no public comments, is there a motion to receive the presentation?
So moved.
We have the movement by Commissioner Mundra. Is there a second?
I second it.
We have a second by Commissioner Deepak. Nicole?
Calling the roll, starting with Chair Norwood.
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil.
Yes.
Commissioner Rice.
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra.
Yes.
And Commissioner Aflaki.
Yes.
Okay, we have motion and a second, and we have a unanimous approval for the presentation has been received. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Alex, for all the hard work that you do in this particular area. The next item on the agenda is the adjournment. The next meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 8th, 2021 at 4:30 p.m. Unless there is the potential for a meeting in between. I'd like to thank all the commissioners for responding early and letting Alex and the team know that you would be available. We noticed right away we had a quorum, so that was very, very helpful in organizing the meeting. So that's very, very much appreciated. And as always, thank you for having the opportunity to attend. Councilmember Dominguez, we know that you guys are very, very, very busy right now. So we appreciate you taking this time out, knowing that you have such a busy schedule coming up. Okay, with that, is there a motion to, do I motion to adjourn?
I make the motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Rice will second it.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Nicole?
Yep. Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Thank you, Margaret. Yes.
Commissioner Rice,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra,
Yes.
and Commissioner Aswapi.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second, and we have unanimous decision. And as was just yelled out, Margaret, we are going to miss you very much. Stop by whenever you'd like. Well, I can't say that. That's for someone else to say. But thank you very much for your service. And thank you, commissioners. We did pretty good. We are only 12 minutes over, and we all know that's because of Alex's presentation, but we'll work on that with them.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good evening, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.